Call it the little court case that could. It's a legal first. The Mohawk Mothers of Kahnawake, a traditionalist matriarchal group, obtained an injunction against McGill University, convincing a judge to postpone groundbreaking at a former hospital site where they feel Indigenous children could be buried.
I feel like we're closer to having our future generations heard, our past generations heard, and whatever has happened to our children, that they have purpose.
But this was not the only historic court victory of the year. Back in February, the Rivière Magpie, Mwetesego Shibu to the Innu Nation, received legal personhood or permanent court-ordered protection from hydro exploitation, a first ever for Canada.
Pour moi, là, ça a toujours été comme ça pour toute la nation. La nature est vivante.
With the CAQ's re-election came talk of economic development, mainly construction of more hydro dams to ease strain on the province's system, which was good news for a community like Kitsisakik, who found out this year they'll finally be hooked up to the Hydro-Quebec power grid after years relying on expensive diesel generators.
Quand je vais avoir ma première facture d'électricité, ça va me faire plaisir de le payer. Je vais prendre ma facture, je vais le faire laminer, là, puis le mettre dans mon mur. Il faut dire que 2000, dans le fond, c'est une journée historique, ça. 2000, on est en 2022, le 2 mai, puis on annonce, tu sais, pour les gens de la communauté qui, aux autres, ils disent, c'est enfin.
But in 2022, APTN also spent time on ancestral Innu territory destroyed by generations of hydro development.
Je ne sais pas à quel point vous êtes conscient que ce soir, on a marqué l'histoire.
This year, however, the Innu Nation gained a representative in Quebec politics with the historic election of Catherine Champagne-Jourdain, the first Indigenous woman to ever hold a seat at the National Assembly.
Mais les choses vont changer pour moi, puis les choses, je l'espère, vont changer aussi grandement pour notre région.
But development concerns this year weren't limited to water. Back in February, the Atikamekw of Manawan pushed back against logging in an ancestral maple grove. By November, an Anishinaabe-led report months in the making made a direct link between deforestation and declining moose numbers.
This is a state of crisis now. There's no way you can refute that.
Meanwhile, Quebec First Nation in Western Quebec pushed back on proposed rare earths mining on an ancestral settlement site, calling out the potential impacts of the CAQ's economic recovery efforts post-COVID.
Anything between the air and the ground, I mean, it really is endless.
Quebec's relations with Indigenous peoples may have been testy, but the Pope's apology and visit to Quebec City provided opportunity for healing.
Nous avons reçu les sacrements de ton fils.
But a new bombshell report by Radio-Canada revealed there are likely more deaths in Canada's residential schools than previously reported. In Quebec, the school with the most possible deaths is Fort George on the Cree Nation of Chisasibi, where 12 children are unaccounted for. The community announced its intention to search the site back in June. Cree Grand Chief Mandigal Masti says most of the work will happen next summer.
It's a 2-year project. I think they're going to be able to have some preliminary answers. And there's also local engagement where they're gathering people's stories.
Moving forward, these are not the only children being sought. Last year, at least 21 were added to Quebec's list of children who went missing or died following a hospitalization off reserve up until 1989, for a new total of 110. Their families are seeking government assistance through Quebec's Babies Law and Access to Information Bill. But Quebec is ending the year facing off with Indigenous kids at the Supreme Court, arguing that Canada overstepped in creating Bill C-92, a law giving Indigenous communities the right to take over their own child welfare systems. A judgment is expected in the coming weeks, and for Indigenous leaders, the agenda for the new year is already set.
I've said this to the Governor of Quebec a number of times. You had the opportunity to do things differently. But you have chosen the other route.
So will Quebec change its course in 2023? Well, you know the saying, only time will tell. But we'll be bringing you all that news as it happens. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.